I want you to know that we cannot and we will not let gun violence in America become normalized. And we cannot and we will not let the majority leader of the United States Senate obstruct the will of the American people. And I'm saddened and frankly appalled that we even have to have a hearing like this today. But it is a beginning, and I'm grateful to all of you for being here. You know, I can't believe we now live in a country in which our children have to be subject to active shooter drills in schools, and I cannot believe we live in a country in which parents have to consider buying their children bulletproof backpacks to go to school. I'm one of those parents, a father of 2 daughters now in college. The fact that I have to think about them if they go to a concert, when they go to the store, or when they go to their college classroom is something I will not tolerate. And to that end, my first question is to you, Mr. McMurray and Ms. Boggs. Please talk to us about the emotional toll, psychological toll on the health and well-being and even academic achievement that just the fear of gun violence in schools is having amongst children and also teachers.
Thank you for the question. As I mentioned before, we had a shooting in my hometown, and so I'm witnessing firsthand what we're experiencing in our schools and how it's impacting them and the students that they serve and the families they serve. I have a goddaughter that goes to middle school, and she used to walk home to her grandmother's every day. It's like 2 blocks away from the school. She no longer can do that any longer because the fear and the trauma that she's felt by witnessing the shooting that happened in her community, she no longer feels safe. And so when you ask me how children and families see, you not only see students that are now afraid and question everything that happens within and around their schools, but you also see parents who are no longer able to walk up to a school to retrieve their children. They're keeping them in auditoriums and then call them out to the cars because they are fearful of what might happen in their community. I see lockdowns happening. I see schools that have become more of a fortress and a prison than a welcoming environment to thrive and learn. And this is happening across the country, not just in my hometown and my community. But you see students that are dealing with it every day. And it impacts them not in a short term, not just when the mass shooting happens, but for years to come. And I find it very sad that we have now the opportunity to create change, and yet we are still battling this change. Would you like to go ahead?
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. You know, I did teach and coach in the Texas public school system for many years, and I remember the day that Columbine happened, and I was in Texas, and that was in Colorado. But that unleashed really a generation of students that I think were exposed and have been exposed to a level of violence and distrust where they're growing up in a whole different set of circumstances. But I remember that day that I walked into that classroom and the elephant, it was too, what do you say? You look those students in the eye and you have to talk about that. We had to address what just happened. I didn't know that it was going to happen over and over and over again over the next 10, 15, 20 years. But that day, I remember looking at my students for the first time, and it was no longer just about me and those students and what we were learning and the culture of really being an educational academic environment. You know, having to deal with those kind of issues and then wonder, now with this student, what is under that coat or jacket? You know, it changes the dynamics of what we're producing and who we are, what we're about. What does it mean to be an education academic institution? What are we teaching our kids? All of that culture is fundamentally changed.